All right, so this is Battle of the Five Armies, and it's a game from Ares Games, the same publishers of War of the Ring. And if you've played War of the Ring from Ares Games, you probably recognize a lot of the pieces, a lot of the figure sculpts in this game are identical to what you see in War of the Ring, 2nd edition. So there's an idea of what you're dealing with here. Now, the map space on this is quite a bit smaller than War of the Ring. It's a single map instead of double map, so get a little bit more room on your table when you play this one. It's also done in a more tactical scale and a more tactical feel. And it's a representation of the battle that takes place at the end of Tolkien's book, The Hobbit. So what happened in this particular game is we're looking at the very tail end of things, and the shadow is going to win, because the front gate is open and there's no way for Thorin Oakenshield to prevent victory. If he leaves the camp, he loses. If he fights his way through, or tries to fight his way through, the goblins can retreat into the front gate. And yeah, it's just the culmination of a lot of things went wrong for the Free Peoples in this one. And it was unfortunate for the Free Peoples. They were never able to get Beorn into play. He's just a devastating character that basically can wreak havoc across the map. The Eagles played a pretty good role in trying to restabilize a collapsing situation, but ultimately the Shadow player won this particular game. So how does it work? Well, as a way to track the progress of the story, there is this track here, and this track, there's story markers are going to move along here, and it's going to function a lot like the hunt mechanic in the War of the Ring. So there's going to be tiles that look like the hunt tiles from War of the Ring, and the Shadow player is going to pull these one at a time each turn to move the fate track or the story track along the track here, which is going to activate new characters like Thorin Oakenshield, like the Eagles, like Beorn, and so forth. You start with a number of Free People characters already in play. The rest, they get activated as this moves along here. Now, how many tiles get pulled from the cup? Well, the number of tiles has to do with the number of leadership or general tokens that are placed down on generals at the start of a turn. You can place up to 3 of those general tokens, and they activate special features on the characters that can receive those round general tokens. So, Lord of the Eagles can, Gandalf can, Thranduil, Dane, and Bard. But in this particular battle, Thranduil, Dane, and Bard all died, so that's why they're flipped over. Once you place those leadership tokens down, then you get to place, or the general tokens, then you get to place a leadership token. And basically these function like a generic leader would in the core game. In fact, you could probably use those pieces in lieu of these if you wanted to. But these are basically like a leader. It's got 1 leadership value, and that's going to help your armies with rerolls and things like that. So the more you place of those round tokens, up to 3, the more of these leadership pieces you can place. Now, there's more than 3 in your supply, but you're going to get more of them through play of events and characters and card play. So that's why you have more than just 3 of those that you can place. All of them come off the board at the end of the turn. So you can accumulate a bunch of them during a turn, but you're going to reset at the end of the turn. Now, for those round tokens, the more you place, the more choices that you give to the Shadow player when it comes time to pulling these tiles. So, say you placed all 3 of your round tokens, the Shadow player, he can pull out a tile, and he can look at it. It's like, you know what, I don't like this one. He can set it aside and pull again a second time. And if he doesn't like the second one, he can set that aside and pull a 3rd time because you placed 3 tokens. If you only placed 1 token, he would be stuck with whatever tile he pulled. If you pulled 2, he could forego the first in order to draw the second. The point being that the last tile you draw, that's the one you got to go with. And that marker is going to move on this track a number of spaces equal to the number on the tile you pulled. And if there's a rune symbol on that tile, like you see on this one here, some of them don't have runes, like this one here. If there's a rune symbol on it, then you will pull one of these story cards out, or I think they're called fate cards, actually. You pull one of these fate cards, and it'll do something. It might move a character along this track and make them enter play more soon than they otherwise would. In this particular battle, it gave Thorin Oakenshield his mighty strokes and shining armor, which made him a real powerhouse. and almost turned the tide for the Free Peoples. Really, it was actually a fairly close game. So that's basically what's going on here. Another big difference between this and War of the Ring is there's damage tokens that get placed down on armies. As you take hits in a battle, you're going to place these damage tokens down, and at the end of a battle round, then you can get rid of these damage tokens by eliminating your characters, or your army pieces rather. So each army piece you eliminate, you remove 2 of these damage tokens. Now, you have to start removing damage tokens when the number of damage tokens exceeds the number of pieces in your army. Like there's 5 pieces in this army, and that's the stacking limit in this game too. 5 pieces. I think in War of the Ring it's 10, so a little bit of a difference there. So if there was 6 damage tokens in this particular space on that army, you'd have to start pulling these out, and that's what's going to eliminate your figures. So the game is going to have a much more tactical feel. You can keep pressing your attack, but as your formation begins to fall apart through the placement of those damage tokens, all of a sudden you can face a sudden and catastrophic collapse. The game has a very, very cool feel to it. Now, if you have the first edition of War of the Ring, which was produced by Fantasy Flight Games in the early to mid-2000s, if you have that, you may have actually bought an expansion that's very hard to find that was made available by Fantasy Flight Games for the War of the Ring. That particular expansion had a map. I think it was about this size. Mine's somewhere in my shelves. I'd have to find it. But if you flip it over, on one side there's Helm's Deep, on the other side it's Minas Tirith, and the style of play is almost identical to this. Very, very similar. If you can ever find that expansion, it's definitely worth picking up because it's a very good game that tells the story. It kind of zooms in on the Lord of the Rings episodes, these big climactic battles, and allows you to play out those battles on a pretty grand scale and leaves you with a pretty cool sense of the story. So this is Battle of the Five Armies. It probably takes about the same amount of time to play as War of the Ring, maybe a little bit shorter, but the game is very, very cool, a lot of fun. It's going to give you the similar feel to War of the Ring, but like I said, on a much more tactical scale. I highly recommend you check it out. I'm not sure. I almost think this is actually out of print, and they're working on a reprint, but I'm not positive of that fact. I've had it for a little while, so if it is available, definitely worth checking out.